Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good, the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Zach, and we're going to have a very free-flowing, fun, hitting all the notes type of conversation today. So, as always, I'm joined by Rafe because I can't do this thing alone. So, Rafe, how you doing?
Zach, I am phenomenal. It is a wonderful day. It is like I said last week, spring was coming, and it's it is not disappointing. Let's just say that it is appearing to be coming in full force, at least here in central Indiana. And hey, Zach, it's a great day to be doing a podcast with you, and it is wonderful to have all our listeners there online. Without you guys, hey, we're nothing but just two guys talking in front of a microphone. So as always, you can contact us at bufnagle@bufnagle.com. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Stitcher, all sorts of other places. We're on Twitter. Zach, I bought a bike last week, Zach, because I haven't had a bike in a long time. And now that I don't have kids, I might actually get a chance to ride them on a regular basis. Yeah, yeah. Hey, I love my kids, but sometimes you take them places instead of riding your own bike. So I got the bike, and then I had this old bike bag, and I hooked the bike bag on the bike, and I opened it up, and I looked inside, and here was like some wrenches and stuff like that, and here was like an old candy bar and things like that. And then there was this little note in there, and I unfolded it and opened it up, and you know what it said? It said, "Listen to the Buff." It was right there, Zach. We are everywhere you need us to be. Hey, if you are new to the podcast, hey, welcome. We are glad you are here. Give us 4 episodes or so, and see if we don't give you a reason to come back for more. We're talking about lots of things, and remember, you tell a friend to listen, and you will get a free episode. Subscribe, and great things happen. Leave us a 5-star review, and even better things happen. Zach, if we get a 5-star review, I get pudding, and you get
A bunch of brownies.
brownies. Nice, nice, nice. So
Yeah,
here
so
we are.
speaking of that bike that you had, and you got it all set up and you went on a little adventure that we were talking about beforehand. Additionally, we were talking about your nice ability to sometimes breathe through your mouth and a bunch of other things that were related to breath work, meditation, and other things, which somehow, I don't know, these conversations flowed together and we started talking about how you found a nice little comfort in biking. And is that a thing that exists in life?
Yeah, I was riding like people who are those of you who are in Indianapolis area with us. We have a series uh, of old what do they call rail trails here in Indiana, and one of the great rail trails runs about 20 miles from north of town all the way to downtown. And I was riding that yesterday, and it was a little bit windy. There was a lot of wind. Actually, Zach, it was a lot of bit windy. And I was cruising along, and I discovered some things. Like I would get going, and you get in a nice, I guess the bikers call it cadence. You know, your feet are going at a nice rate, and the miles are clipping by. But every now and then, Zach, I'd have to stop, or there'd be a truck would go across one of the cross streets or something like that, or I'd have to slow down because people were walking. I didn't want to run them over. And so there was this time where I really got it. Zach, I'll say it this way. I got into the flow of it, right? And that kind of piqued your interest was with that term flow. Apparently that's a thing. The flow is not just like what your hair does. Flow is like it's a state of mind. It's a state of activity.
Yeah, so flow is a state of being. Flow is part of probably the vernacular of a lot of the things that in the mental well-being space, with your visualizations, with your meditations, with your mindfulness, with your ability to surrender. But flow, in its way, is looking at your nervous system, the way your brain reacts to certain scenarios, and how you are perceiving the world around you and the events that you are doing, or in some situations, the events you are not doing. There is a flow state. It's called just that. It's the state where you are comfortable. You are able to understand the world around you, and you are able to, in my term, operate at your highest version of yourself, at your peak performance, and be able to accomplish a lot in a short amount of time compared to somebody who maybe struggles with a flow state in more time.
Now, we might have called that back in the day. We might have called that being in the zone, maybe, or you're hitting on all cylinders, and that happened to me yesterday when I was biking on occasion, but it didn't happen all the time. And it happens to me on occasion when I'm at work, writing. You may think, well, how can you really get into flow or into the zone when you're writing reports or writing computer code? It can happen, but not all the time. And so you've been studying this stuff, Zach, and you have found that there are states around. I guess I'll call it around or beneath flow, and you know about ways to move between them or how you ought to, or
Yeah,
how does all that work?
yeah. So flow happens in a cycle, and so there is a cycle of flow, and you go through the whole cycle, and when you complete it, if you complete it, we'll talk about that a little bit later. You have experienced a flow cycle. However, it's possible that you get stuck in the phases of flow and you can never complete a full cycle, and that happens to a lot of people. You kind of mentioned it with writing papers or doing work or working out or whatever it may be. You get stuck in a cycle. You get stuck in a pattern, and you can never complete the cycle because you're in one or two phases and you never move past it.
So there are phases to I guess I'll call it productivity, maybe, or being the ultimate one is to be in flow, right? But you're saying there are ways you have to take the steps to get there, and sometimes you get stuck, and it's not always a nice linear path to the summit.
Yeah, I think of it as a circle, but
Okay.
square path, whatever. It doesn't matter. That's the beauty of all these things. It really doesn't matter.
Okay.
What
So this is
matters
the
is
model.
the actual implementation of the skill. So yeah, you can't just enter flow. That's not something that happens. You can't just wake up one day and be like, I'm going to sit down and read this book, because if you would sit down and read this book, you would understand that it takes you a while. There's a little bit of a struggle, frustration happening as you get comfortable with the book. So that's the first phase. The first phase is that struggle phase.
Right. So there, how many phases are there?
There are
There's
four
four phases. Okay, and you're going to
phases.
start with struggle. You start with struggle, all right, and that's actually I find that kind of comforting that that's the first phase, because it seems to me like I spend a lot of time in that phase is like struggling to get going. Either like when I was biking yesterday, I got my wife dropped me off at the drop off place, and I got my little helmet on. I put my water bottles in. I started
Got
going,
your
and
pencil?
I got well. It wasn't like school, Zach. I had all the things I needed for the ride. Yeah, that's an old reference to an '80s thing. All right, so I tech metaphorically, Zach. Yes, I had my pencil. Okay, so but I started riding, but it doesn't feel smooth at the beginning, right? You're getting your legs stretched out. You're getting your head on right. You're making sure that your brakes work. You want to make sure you're in the right gear. All those things are happening. You make sure your shoes aren't getting caught in the. Sometimes, Zach, my shoelaces get caught in the chain. Have you ever had that happen?
When I was younger and
Yeah,
dumber.
when it done. Well, there you go. See, that's where I am. All right. So, but you got to make sure you're not in that state. But struggle is is really real. It's just real. Okay. And it can happen whether you're going on a bike ride, whether you're prepping for a test, whether you are reading a book, whether you're writing a report, whether you're practicing piano, any of those things. It starts with struggle.
Yeah, there is going to be a struggle. It's not a natural thing. Additionally, we had this conversation in our pre-production meeting. I think it's very important to note when we talk about a lot of these mental well-being skills, and one that came up was meditation. And a lot of people are just like, "Oh, go meditate." Well, the thing about meditation is it's not like you just sit down, you have your music, your eyes closed, and you focus, and you can meditate. You struggle for a minute, 2 minutes. So flow and meditation kind of follow these same principles, follow this same pattern of you kind of struggling, understanding what's going on before you're able to release that frustration and eventually move into flow.
So that sounds like the second piece is this what struggle and warm up, kind of the same thing. And then what did
Yeah,
you say? You said release. Is that the thing?
release.
That's part of it.
Yeah. So the first is we talk about is struggle. It's it's that uncomfortable feeling. It's the spinning. That like this chair isn't comfortable. It's struggle. You don't want to fail and frustrate. You don't want that, but you have to sit through it and sit with it. Eventually, you're going to release that. It's almost like a if you are familiar with bow and arrows, you pull that bowstring back. There's tension. There's that frustration, and then you let it go, and then the arrow's flying and hits and achieves flow.
So is that something that happens naturally? I mean, it's like if I'm struggling, because I know this happens to me if I'm working in my workshop. This happens to me sometimes writing computer code. Like I fight it. Is the answer that if you fight it long enough, that will release, or is it ever possible that you just never make it out of that struggle?
I mean, yes and no. Like if you fight it and you're just like, oh, this is uncomfortable. This is wrong. Eventually, you have to let go. There is a letting go, and that letting go sometimes is you frustrate it with it enough where you become comfortable and you can just go and do the thing. Other times, it's you just gotten past that stage. Like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to do it. Like so that's why that release component it is the second phase and it's really important. Even though it sounds like it's a super short. Oh, 5 seconds later, now I'm in flow. But we can talk about inflow and what that means a little bit later as well.
Yeah, yeah. So it generally will happen, this release thing, but there's a component of it that is, I guess, that you do. It's a decision, right? It's sometimes it just kind of happens, but sometimes the decision is to let it happen, to stick with it, to fight through, and then you will get there. Like stretching when you're warming up.
Yeah, like in my notes with the release, I have it's the letting go of the frustration. It's that letting go of that struggle. So you just like, hey, this. That's why I made the reference earlier to the bow and arrow. It's like you pull that arrow back. There's that tension. There's that frustration, and then you release it, and you're letting that away. You're not dealing with that anymore. It's not your problem. It's not your issue. It's the same thing that happens with meditation. If you sit down the first time as a meditation, and I challenge anyone who is not big meditators to do this. Sit down, Google meditation songs, choose one that's like 7 minutes long, hit play on it, find a seat, maybe you have a yoga block, sit on that, whatever it may be. Close your eyes and just kind of just like sit with your thoughts. The first 1 minute, 2 minutes is going to be frustrating. You're going to be like, what the hell am I getting out of this? Eventually, you have to let that what the hell feeling drift away. You let go of it and just focus on whatever thoughts come to you, whatever they may be, and be at peace. Listen to that music, listen to your breath, whatever it may be, whatever it is, slow yourself down, reset yourself, and then come out of that situation and you'll be in position to be successful. I can talk more on this at a later date, but that's not what we're doing today.
All right. So make sure I get squared away. You got struggle. Then you got to come up with a way to release that, to let it go, and then you move into I guess I'll call high performance or production or
For me,
cadence.
officially, it's the flow state. It is that state. It is the focus. It's the bright light of the dance. It's where you're operating at your peak performance. It's you at your best self. It's your highest version of self. Whatever phrase you want to use, that's what it is. So after you sit down. I used the book, reading the book earlier. It's like you sit down. It was uncomfortable to make it through a couple pages. Eventually, you kind of let go. You're comfortable. You're reading the book, and you just keep going. And 4 hours later, you're done with the book because you were in that mindset. You were in that state that allowed you to process through all of that.
So does it require so if I'm in a state of flow, is that a thing that I should that takes active decision on my part to maintain, or is how do I want to maximize that? I want to
Yeah.
stay at that peak as long as I can, right?
Yep.
How do I is there a trick to that, or do I just comes with practice, or what?
Yes, it comes with practice, but also there are tricks. And then thirdly, you can't stay all day in flow. Your body, your nervous system, your mental well-being, it's not going to be able to allow you to do that, which is why there's an important fourth stage that we'll talk about later. But to be able to maximize your time in flow, you got to understand that there are going to be things that come in and inhibit flow or flow inhibitors, such as Rafe deciding to play with Legos while we record this podcast. It's
It's a helicopter.
distraction. It's not good. It gets in your way. Additionally, there's the comparison factor of like maybe you're biking and you're just like, oh, why am I not going as fast as that guy? Why am I not reading as fast as somebody else? Why am I not doing X, Y, or Z? You guys want to know the answer? Nobody cares. Do your thing. Focus on what you need to do so that you can get the best out of you. It's you versus you, not anybody else. It's your world. We're living in it, and that's true for everybody. But additionally, there's the ego factor of like you don't let your ego control you or get out in front of you, because then you're chasing that thing. You're going to drop out of flow, and if you drop out of flow, you don't get to go through the 4 stages, because there's one more that we need to discuss as well.
So ego, it's funny you said that, because that is, I'm sure a lot of people out there are surprised to hear that. That's a big thing for me, is to be able to get past that. The ego, right? Ego's pride, right? And pride is the foundation of all sin. It is the thing that it will inhibit you everywhere you go. It is the downfall of everybody. And you got to imagine, if you're doing great work in doing what you're doing, ego can screw that up. Ego will screw you up everywhere you go. So how does that get in the way when if you're in flow, you're working at peak performance? How does ego distort that or destroy that and not let you wrap up the way you should?
Yeah, it's gonna take you out of flow. So, and it's that egotistical response of like, oh, I'm better, or I'm prideful. Or it's kind of like you were mentioning. It's not going to allow you to wrap up your flow state. And the important thing I don't think a lot of people understand is like, you don't just hit flow and then you come out of it and you're done. You hit flow and you have to process your time out of flow before you can start the whole cycle over again. You don't want to have something come up that's a distraction, because that's just going to take away all your progress. It's like what you mentioned with the bike riding. If you're riding your bike and like, why is that guy going faster than me? And you try to catch him, you try to play that ego game, you try to compare yourself, any of those things come up, you just took yourself out of the game.
It was really interesting yesterday, because this bike that I bought, I did not buy the bike that 25-year-old Rafe wanted to buy. I bought the bike that 57-year-old Rafe should have bought. All right. And if those of you who are bikers realize that there are different kinds of bikes out there, and they have different, there's more performance road bikes. And then I just call this kind of like, it's a grandpa bike. All right. It sits up pretty straight. All right. It doesn't have 3 wheels. Okay. I'm not going that far, but it's, and there were people that I'd be going along, and all of a sudden I'd hear somebody say, on your left, and 2 guys would come by in those helmets that are aerodynamic, and they're in the fancy yellow shirts, and they're all tucked down, and they're riding, one guy drafting the other, and they're just zooming by on my left. And then one time I was going along, the wind was really hitting me, and I was getting really tired. And these 2 teenage girls passed me. And I was like, really? And I thought, I don't care. You know what? Let them go. And then I said to myself, but pride still got me, because I thought, I started up there at Sheridan. They weren't up there with me this morning. I've gone all this distance so far, and if they pass me now, that's not a big deal. Maybe they just started up there and they're just going down the block.
That's getting that ego in there just a little bit, and that's
ego
dangerous.
Does come back.
Because it can take you away from the being of just like you just on your cadence or whatever it may be about you riding, and you can get off that, and you don't want to get off that, especially because you want to close that cycle, you want to close that loop, which leads to the last stage, which if you've made it through the first 3 and you can't get here, that's really unfortunate, because making through the first 2 is very difficult. Of the recovery stage, it's you come out of the flow, you sit, you realize, you recognize what it is, and then you get ready to do it again down the road, whatever that may look like.
So that recovery is going to come. I mean, and so when you talk about recovery, you're talking like evaluation of how you did, or just like take a breath and allow yourself to be distracted. Go have a brownie. Go check the mail.
Yeah. I think we've talked about all 4 stages, so I'm going to give an example of walking through the cycle itself with my own personal life. So I'm going to use the rugby example because, well, I'm Zach. It's what I do. So the struggle phase, that's going to be that warm up time. It's going to be the stretching. It's going to be getting the kinks out of my hamstrings, whatever it needs. It's going to be getting taped. It's going to whatever else I need to get myself in a position to be successful in the future. That's that struggle phase. It's going to be difficult to warm up in the beginning. It's, I got to run. I got to get my stretching in. I got to make sure my body's warmed up, fired, to be able to ready to turn on, stuff like that. And eventually I get to the point where I'm like, all right, cool. I'm running through my passes. I'm running through my reads. I'm running through whatever I need to do to be able to prepare myself for the game. It takes a while to get there. Eventually, I get to the point, though, that the warm-up is over, and that's the release stage. So you're off the field. You get your jersey on. You get some water. You reset. You're huddled around your teammates. That's good. You're ready to go. Whistle comes. Kickoff's there. I'm in the flow. It's like I've released all the negative thoughts I had. I've released all the positive thoughts I've had. The sole thing I'm focused on is playing the game. And when you release those thoughts, you release that negativity, even that positivity, you're going to be able to play at your highest level. That's how it worked for me. Eventually, the game is over. You hang out with your teammates, you get water, you take your jersey off, you get a post-game brownie, whatever it may be. That's that recovery phase. You think about what you did, how you felt, what was good, what was bad, and then you just move on. And then you're not necessarily into the struggle phase as you like walk to your car or something like that. You're just kind of just in life. You don't need to be in a stage at all times. That's another thing that I think people need to understand. It's like you don't need to be in, I'm not in flow right now, but I want to get there, so therefore right now I need to no. It ebbs and flows, and right now it's just one of those ebbs or flows, whatever you want to call it, on the level of just being able to be like, hey, cool, it is what it is. I moved on, I did what I needed to do, and we're now on to the next thing, and we're getting ready and prepared for that, whatever that may look like.
So you don't have to be in this cycle at all times. I guess you could the I don't know, the academician in me wants to say, okay, well, as you go to your car, though, you probably want to be a good car driver. So when you get in the car, you get in there, you get yourself a seatbelt on, you make sure the radio is on the right channel or off, you make sure you check your parking space around. That's kind of struggle setting up. And then you need to be in a driving flow. Otherwise, you're going to be a problem. But I
mean,
suppose
you're not wrong, but like,
right,
I'm not thinking, I got to flow now. It's just like, I think for things like academic performance or athletic performance or job performance or something like that, recognizing where you're at on this cycle is important, because it's going to be able to allow you to be at your best ability for whatever it may be.
All right. So what this comes to me, then I get to this thought, like, so this is this model for how I work. And if it's a good model, it ought to help me come up with a way to deal with deviations. So you're playing the game, you're in a rugby game, and suddenly something happens, something untoward, like, your prop blows out a knee, somebody makes a bad call, a streaker runs on the field and interrupts the game. Something takes you out of that. What do you do? I mean, you can't. Can you just turn it back on? I guess you don't just flip the switch, as they say. What do you do?
Because if you're in flow and you can't get to that recovery, which means you really can't get to that struggle again. So if there is, let's say, an injury or a bad call or something like that, well, one, like we talked about it earlier, that ego, we don't want that coming in. So it's just like
compartmentalize.
That word I can't. Ego. The C word I can't say. Word.
Compartmentalize.
Yeah, compartmentalize. I'm taking my thought away. I'm putting it in a box away from my other thoughts, because I'm not going to let it distract me. Okay. Yep. I'm going to be able to then focus on what I need to, and like maybe it's the fact that I like mini cycle and I go through a release stage again real quick, and then I get back into flow. You almost like mini cycle those two guys together real quick. There are times, like if there's an injury, there's like a long halftime or something like that, and you gotta do something, like maybe you go like mini warm up again. Mini 5-minute warm up, get back with your teammates, get your water, get back into the game. Like maybe that's what you need to do. I talked about this last week with the visualization skills. If I'm frustrated, if I'm, crashing or flatlining, whatever term you want to use about like my state, my way of playing, like I'm going to take 3 deep breaths. I'm going to visualize what I'm going to do next. And then I'm just going to get rid of all those thoughts. I'm release that and move on to the next thing.
So that's a little re-struggle, right? A little get back into that. And Zach, I can see how these interruptions and stuff. Ego's got to play into all of them, no matter what they are. Like you talk about an injury or a bad call. You can look at that. Ego is all of those. Like we're good. We shouldn't have a bad call against us. We don't deserve. That's ego, right? We shouldn't. We didn't deserve to lose our star player. That's ego. These ego gets in the way of all of these things, and certainly if something good happens to you and you don't process it right, ego can get in the way of that thing too. So I gotta think that this process though that you talk about struggle, release, flow, and then recovery that's got to happen in a work environment too. So how does that how would that affect my work?
How would that affect your day as a professional?
As a
Unlike me,
professional,
who's like a fake
a
professional.
scientist guy. I'm a
Yeah,
scientist guy. Right.
yeah. As Captain Johnny Science Head over here.
Yep.
Johnny Space Commander. There we go. So that struggle phase is when you wake up in the morning, and you get to your desk, whatever it may be. You grab your Mountain Dew, you grab your breakfast, grab little snacks and you're reading your email, you're checking in on things. You're planning a to-do list about the things that you need to take care of for the day. That's kind of that struggle phase of you just sitting in like, oh, here we go again. I got to work. Not the most glamorous thing to do, but you struggle through it. You work with it. It's not the best. It's frustration. We've all been there. We all know what that feeling is. We all know what it looks like. But that release stage, when you're like, okay, cool. Maybe you get up and you use the bathroom. You throw away some trash. You grab another snack, whatever it may be. Different for everybody. And then that flow state is when you get into the position of like, okay, cool. I got to write this 2,000 lines of code that does X, Y, and Z and makes a banana at the end. I don't know. Science stuff.
or writing a report, right?
Yeah, or writing a report. Okay, cool. Things, right? And additionally, maybe you're writing a report. So in that struggle phase is you doing some outlining of what your report's going to be. And then that release is you need to take a step back. You need to go use the bathroom. You need to go take a shower. You need to go pet a puppy. Whatever it is, you need to release, take a step back, and then come back into it. And then you can, go across that flow state and be able to, do your report. Maybe it takes you an hour and 30 minutes instead of 4 because you were able to work through the whole process.
There's at least for me, there's times when a lot of when we write stuff, right? I have difficulty with writing because it always feels like such a heavy task to write a report, to write some sort of summary of what we did over the last week with some analysis, what it means to whomever it means something. And at some point when I do the setup, I outline what we're going to say. And the worst part is I'm not exactly sure where it's going, but sometimes I have to just start working. And I find I guess that probably fits in this model here as part of the release from the struggle is, all right, I got everything I have. I have to start this process if I'm going to get anything out of it. I can't expect to have all the bumps smoothed out before I start. I have to start writing sometime.
Yeah. I mean, eventually you have to, you can't, if you don't start writing, you're eventually just going to not complete the cycle, which means that you have to start back over at struggle, or you get distracted by something and you have to start back over. Like that's going to happen. And recognizing that, okay, cool, that's going to happen. And then moving forward and past it.
So I know a lot of us who work in I'm going to call it industrialized science. I don't know what else to call it. I work in pharma, but I'm sure there are people who work in all over other places in aerospace and in manufacturing. It's like whatever you do, there's similar problems. And I know there's a tremendous need for meetings in business, but there's this feeling that they just suck all your time and all your productivity out of you. Do you see a similar thing in that? I think, how does that fit in this thing?
Yeah. So, you can be in a meeting and be in flow. Those two things can exist at once. However, if Rafe's working, Joe's working, I'm working, and someone else is working, and someone a fourth person, fifth person, is like, hey, I need you guys to get on this meeting, and interrupts your guys' cycle. Maybe Rafe just got up to use the bathroom and he's in that release stage and he's ready to write his report. His flow now got interrupted because he's like, I thought I was going to do this thing. Now I got to do this meeting, so I'm off. So when you come out of the meeting, maybe you did hit flow in the meeting. You got that recovery stage. Now you got to start back over. You got to struggle through again. You got to release again. And then you got to hit that flow state when you're writing that report. It's going to take away your productivity. Or you just like, maybe you just say, I'm going to write this report. And you go through, and it just takes you forever to get going because you're not prepared. You're not in the mental well space to be able to do that productively, because the time that you took to do that effectively got interrupted and cut off. Because meetings are important. They're good to do, keep everyone on the same page. But eventually, if all you're doing is meetings, people aren't going to be able to be productive. Like, the amazing thing about flow is flow makes hard work easy because you are at your peak performance level. It's another thing I can talk about. But you're at that peak performance level, which means that you are able to do your highest and best version of work in probably the least amount of time. So it could take you an hour to do a thing that would maybe take you 4 hours if you had interruptions and got distracted, other things of the like came up.
Yeah, the best days for me are the ones with very few meetings, because that way that you can there's a lot of that prep work, a lot of that struggle. I think I have that, and maybe other people don't. I know people who are very efficient. They can get in and out of those states pretty quick. It takes me a long time for my head to get in the game on some of those things, to remember what I needed to do, to get all the pieces in place, to open up all the files, make sure I have the printouts, make sure I know what the objective is. By the time I get all that set up, if I've done that and then I get interrupted with an important phone call, or somebody having a question that they need answered to get their work done, it really takes me out of that. It takes me out of that of the flow state. And I guess there's a nice thing that we have where I work, is that we have a do not disturb button, because we're all remote and you really can't tell if somebody's there or not there. There's a little signal, but you can never tell if they're actually in the meeting or just signed up for the meeting. But that's the thing that I turn on and off on occasion, is the do not disturb, because I've got to get this done. And once I'm in the flow, it's very easy to get the work done.
Yeah, recognizing that when you're in it or you can get to it is super powerful, because you mentioned it, like there are people maybe can in and out of these cycles a little faster because this is a skill. So if you're able to perfect that skill, understand that skill, same thing that I talked about last week, the visualization, you will be able to do this more effectively and at a higher level. Maybe you recognize that, okay, cool, I got an hour, I got to do X, Y, and Z before this meeting. What's the thing that I can do, takes 35, 45 minutes, that I can do at a high level if I'm able to get myself in that state, rather than just trying to grind and frustrate through a bunch of different things at once, because I only have an hour.
So you've read this. This is a you read this in a book?
I've read this in multiple books and online and journals, and I've talked with people about it.
So, and the general topic is what productivity, peak performance.
I would say peak performance, because most of my knowledge of it relates to athletics. So I think peak performance is the term that comes up there. Additionally, flow is kind of a subtopic of meditation, and then the autonomic nervous system, which comes into play, which is another bunch of topics we could talk about. But it's a substate of understanding that what is your peak performance, what does it look like, and how do you get there, and how can you stay there and go to that state multiple times. Well, I mentioned this earlier, flow is not something you can stay in for 20 hours a day. It's because of the cycling nature of it. But if you can hit flow for an hour and a half twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, that's 3 hours of flow a day. 5 days a week, that's 15 hours. 4 weeks a month, that's 45 hours. That's pretty good. Especially
how many
when
weeks? Wait. 15 times 40, 60 hours a day. 4 weeks, 3 weeks?
Oh, nice. Yeah,
more. It's more.
Even better. and if you can, in that hour and a half, you can do the work that would normally take you 4 hours. You're more productive. Your team's firing on it. All cylinders. Everyone loves you, and you get some more brownies. Like, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, brownies are good. So, all right. So let me see if I can summarize where we are in this thing. All right. Expect there to be struggle. All right. And that's, you have to, like,
That's like a life lesson too. Like, expect there is going to be struggle. It's going to take you a while. Once you're released from that struggle and find the flow, this is about in life in general, things are going to get better.
But, and then but I'm thinking about a couple things though. You do need, you called it recovery, right? At the end, it's like, you've got to come down off of that to go immediately from that to a different scenario. That takes time. And I know a lot of people, Zach, talk about how, and I see this when I do athletic things. I see it mostly in athletic things because it's so obvious. But I also see it in I'm sure musicians see it in warm up and performance. I know I see it at work when I get the opportunity to get into a flow state. But it is so obvious when you're in an athletic thing. You spent all day working. You're fried from that. You need some recovery. Can the recovery from one kind of flow be the struggle for the other? Like I come home from work. Like I know people, when I used to drive to work, the drive home was a recovery time.
Yes.
But sometimes it's also a struggle time for the next thing. Can you overlap them? Is that all right? Does that happen?
Yes, but not recognizing. I mean, I think recognizing that like driving home from work, that's the recovery from work. Additionally, after again, I'm using the athletic example because that's my wheelhouse. After I work out, I have a smoothie. Not because smoothies taste good, but because I'm going to replenish my body with good nutrients and electrolytes and healthy things, so I can have more brownies later or something like that. But I'm going to recover, reset my body, and then I can move on to the next thing. It's a similar concept. Like, I love the driving home from work. That's a great example. Or I think with myself now, it's sometimes I will do some work in the morning, and then I'll take a shower, and that's my release before I get into flow. It's a similar type of thing. Recognizing those triggers, triggers and flow is another thing we could talk about as well. About how to trigger those things, and especially in group settings. Flow can exist for individuals and groups and teams and whatever it may be. And having those things align and come together is important as well.
Yeah, it was interesting when we had our pre-production meeting, because we did that in pre-production, didn't we, Zach? We struggled a little bit, tried to figure out where exactly the topic was going, how did we want it to align, and then when we did, it was like, holy cow! We spent 25 minutes talking here. We should have been recording that. All right, but you get into that, and I just looked up now, and we're at 37 minutes in. We have been flowing, for lack of a better term, and that is great. All right, struggle, release, flow, recovery. All right, in all aspects of your life. Be prepared for struggle, let it go, get to high performance, take a break.
Yeah. And I think that take a break, especially today, things move and happen so quickly. It's important to do because you want to complete that cycle. Completing that cycle is very, very important.
That's it, Zach. That seems to me like that's one of those goods that we're seeking.
That's what we like to hear. I want to, again, thank you all for listening. I want to go remind you to go seek the good, be the good, and spread the good. Enjoy the adventure of life.